One of the most dramatic events that happened in the previous generation, in the late 20s, was the fact that the previous Rebbe, who at that time was still in Russia, was put into jail for spreading Yiddishkeit, having yeshivas, having chadorim, having mikvos. There's a very, very fascinating story, what happened before he went to jail, during the time he was in jail, after he came out of jail, and I do suggest everyone to read it. And as a matter of fact, there's a few editions that came out, and one of them, which I'm holding right here, is called A Prince in Prison, which is basically the story how the previous Rebbe wrote it. And then there's another book that came out with what went on around the story then. When the previous Rebbe came out, first they sentenced him to death, then they changed that sentence from death to exile. He was going to be exiled in a city called Kostroma, and then he was in Kostroma for just a few weeks, and then they let him out completely. When the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, came back from Kostroma, and he came on the Shabbos after that, he made the bracha of Birchas Hagomel. I'm sure when you go to shul, you see once in a while there's a guy who goes up by the Torah and he makes the bracha of Birchas Hagomel. Normally it's known that this Birchas Hagomel, usually it's people who travel who make that bracha, or it's people who, after an operation, make the bracha. Basically, the bracha says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, hagomel l'chayovim toivos shegmalani toiv. Basically, thanking the Eibishter for all the good that he did to me. We're going to analyze a little bit this blessing here. Who makes this blessing? So, there are 4 types of people who have to make that blessing. Somebody who was ill under the knife on a very serious operation, and he came out, thank God, okay. Someone who went through the sea, a transatlantic trip, and everything was fine. Someone who was in jail, in a tough jail, not the jails where you watch television all day. I'm talking about the real tough jails. And someone who went through a desert. As a matter of fact, this is called in Hebrew, choyle, sick, yam, yisurim, jail, midbar, desert. And as a matter of fact, we say in davening, V'chol ha'chayim yoidu chasela, all those that are living are going to praise you, Hashem, forever. Chayim is ches, yud, mem, which is choyle, yam, yisurim, midbar. So kol ha'chayim, these 4, yoidu chasela. They are the ones who thank the Eibishter all the time. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he came out of jail, he made the bracha of Baruch Hagomel l'chayovim toivos. After that, there was a Farbrengen, and the Frierdiker Rebbe said a Maamor. And the Maamor, the discourse, Hasidic discourse, starts with the words Baruch Hagomel l'chayovim toivos shegmalani toiv, and it's printed in called Sefer Hamaamorim Kuntreisim. But something very interesting happened over there. In the Gemara, there's a certain order how these 4 are enumerated, how they're listed. And in Rashi and Chumash, the previous Rebbe has his own order. He put it in a different order. And there were some people who were questioning, why did the Frierdiker Rebbe not put it in the order which everyone else has? And they came to the conclusion that, usually when they say a Maamor, when they say a Hasidic discourse, they're not so meticulous to quote things exactly how they are. What we are going to see today is that the Frierdiker Rebbe he had an unbelievable point why he actually wrote the order of the 4 in a different order than the way it is in the Gemara. We're going to see something really fascinating, and then we're going to see the deep explanation of Chassidus in this whole subject of Birchas Hagomel and these 4. Why were these 4 selected, that these 4 are the ones who say the bracha? Just as a parenthesis, the Rebbe, when the Rebbe came to New York, when he fled away from the Nazis in also 1941, the previous Rebbe arrived in 1940 in Adar, Tes Adar. The Rebbe came in 1941, a year and a half later, on Chav Ches Sivan. The Rebbe came in the middle of the week on a Tuesday to New York. On Thursday morning, the Rebbe said Birchas Hagomel. On Thursday night, the Rebbe fabrengt. It was the first fabrengen of the Rebbe in America. All the Chassidim in America, most of them never saw the Rebbe. They only heard that the previous Rebbe has the son-in-law who is an unbelievable lamden, who knows how to learn a lot, nigle, Chassidus, but they never actually heard him or saw him. Those days there wasn't the communications that we have today. And the Rebbe came into Fabreng, in the Zal upstairs, in the small shul upstairs in 770. And he came in with a siddur, the way he did for the next 60 years, where we always saw the Rebbe, 50 years. And the Rebbe sat down at the table. This was about 8 in the evening. And the Rebbe fabrenged until 3 o'clock in the morning. And what did he fabreng about? Arba tzrichim lehoides. Who are the 4 that have to make the Birchas Hagomel? Because the Rebbe that day said Birchas Hagomel. And the Rebbe had a whole new explanation on this subject, which unfortunately we are not going to be able to touch it today. In Mir Tashem, in the next year, we will discuss the Arba Tzrichim L'Hoides, how the Rebbe explains it. Today we're going to go step by step. First we're going to discuss why these 4 and why the Frierdiker Rebbe made them in a different order. And in Mir Tashem, in the future, we're going to go through a little more this whole subject. So today we're going to do part 1 of Birchas Hagomel. So let's go directly to our curriculum. Go to source number 1, and this whole Sikha is based on a Sikha in Likutei Sichos Garelik Yud Beis, number 12, pages 20 through 27, and a Maamor from the Rebbe in the year Tafshin Lamed Zayin, which is 5737. So let's go to source number 1. The Torah says as follows in Parshat Tzav, Peirik Zayin Pasuk Aleph. The Torah says, "V'zois Torah zevach hashlomim asher yakriv l'Hashem." This is the law of a peace offering that somebody will want to bring a korban, a sacrifice to the Eibishter. What kind of peace offering he wants to bring? Says the Eibishter, Im al toida yakrivenu, if he wants to bring it as a thanks offering, a toida. Says the pasuk, vehi kriva zevach toida, together with this korban of toida, he should bring chalois matzos belulois bashemen, loaves of unleavened flour mixed with oil. Urekike matzos meshuchim bashemen, and also wafer type of loaves which are mixed with oil, which are smeared with oil. V'soiles murbeches, and flour which is kneaded in boiling hot water. Chalos blulos bashemen. Basically, together with this korban come 3 different types of breads. We're not going to go into the details of what they are because that's beyond the scope of what we're trying to talk about over here. So the pasuk says, if somebody wants to bring a korban toida, a thanks offering, so he should bring it together with these chalas. Let's see what does Rashi say. Go to source number 2, Rashi. Im al toida yakrivenu. If he wants to bring a korban toida, says Rashi, im al dvar hoido, if this is something that he wants to thank, al neis shenaseloi. This is not your regular thank you, this is a thanks for a miracle that happened to him. Kugoin, for example, and Rashi will bring the 4 types that we said before. Yerde hayam, somebody who went through the sea. Veholche midbarius, and someone who went through the midbar, the desert. Vechavushe beisu asurim, those who were incarcerated. Vechoyle shenisrape, and someone who was ill and became healthy. Shehem tzrichim lehoides, they are the ones who have to thank the Eibishter. Why? Shekasuv bahen, because in Tehillim it says about them, Yoidu Lashem chazdei v'nifloisav livnei adam, that there are those who thank the Eibishter for his kindness and the wonders that he does to people. Ve'yiz bechuziv chetoida, so they will bring a korban toida. Says Rashi, Imal achas me'ele no dar shlomim halolu, if for one of these 4 things he brought this korban, shalmei toida hein. These are called shlomim, peace offerings of toida, of thanks. And they have to bring with it bread. In other words, Rashi is telling us who is the one that brings this special thank you offering. It's not just anybody. It's somebody who had a miracle. Who had a miracle? It's one of these 4 types which are enumerated in Tehillim in Peirik of Zayin. What's this Tehillim Peirik of Zayin? This is a Peirik that we say every Friday afternoon, right before Shabbat, right before Mincha, Erev Shabbos. Not going to go now into the whole thing why we do that, but it starts from the time of the Baal Shem Tov, etc. And over there, the Peirik of Tehillim discusses these four people. What does it say in the Peirik? Go to source number 3. We're going to quote a few of the words from that Peirik, so we have the basic picture here. Go to source number 3, Tehillim Peirik of Zayin. The Peirik starts with the words Hoidu Lashem ki toiv ki lo olam chazdoi. Hoidu, thank the Eibishter because he is good and he always does kindness with us. So we're talking about a whole chapter of Tehillim that discusses praising the Eibishter. The first one who got into trouble, that later praises the Eibishter, Toh bamidbar, those who wandered in the desert. So eventually what happens? Vayitzaku, and they cry to the Eibishter. So a few psukim later it says, Vayadrichem b'derech yeshara, and the Eibishter brings them back into the right path. So what do? Yoidu Lashem chazdoi. Then they will thank the Eibishter for it. Then comes the next case. The first case is the desert. Next case is Asirei Onu Varzel, those who are chained, those who are incarcerated. Vaizaku, and they also cry to the Eibishter. I'm not saying all the words in the Peirik, I'm just bringing the words which are important for us here to get the flow. So what does the Eibishter do to the people who are incarcerated? He takes them out from the darkness, etc. What is their reaction? Yoidu Lashem chazdoi. They thank the Eibishter for his chesed, for his kindness. Now comes the third type. Kol oichel tesayv nafsham. There are those who unfortunately are ill, that everything that they eat, they become nauseated, they become sick, they can't eat. Vayizaku, so they also daven to the Eibishter. What does the pasuk say after that? Yishlach dvarav v'yirpoim. The Eibishter sends his word and he makes them healthy again. What's their reaction? Yoidu Lashem chazdoi. They thank the Eibishter for his chesed. What do? Ve'yizbechu zivchei toda, and they bring a Korban Toda. Now comes the fourth. Yoirde hayom ba'aniyos, those who go into the sea with the big boats. Yochoygu ve'yanu kashikar, and all of a sudden there is a storm, and the ship goes back and forth like a drunken. Vayitzaku, they scream to the Eibishter, help. Vayecheshu galeihem, the Eibishter makes the waves stop. So what's the reaction? Yoidu Lashem chazdoi. So basically when you go through that Peirik, you see these four again. Those who go through the sea, those who are incarcerated, those who are ill, and those who go through the desert. That's basically what it is. So in other words, let's make a short summary. The pasuk says that somebody wants to bring a Korban Toda. Thank you. Says Rashi, it's not your average thank you. This is somebody who had a miracle, and not someone who had a miracle stam. We're talking somebody who had a special miracle, one of the four. Choyle, Yam, Yisurim, Midbar. So far so good. But if that's the case, we're going to have a very big question here. Question number one is, how does Rashi know that? What does pushes Rashi to say that we're talking about a thank you for a miracle? And if somebody didn't have a miracle, somebody's birthday, he wants to thank the Eibishter, Baruch Hashem, he reached his birthday of whatever years, he wants to bring a thank you to the Eibishter. Says Rashi, no, that's not what the Korban Toda is for. Why not? There must be something in the pasuk that pushes Rashi to say that this is not your average thank you. Why not? Not only that, how does Rashi know that it's for a dafke, for a miracle? And which one of these four? If it's just because it says it in Tehillim it says that there are these four types, what does that have to do with our pasuk? How do you know that the four psukim in Tehillim is talking about the Toda of our pasuk? Where does Rashi see the connection here? Not only that, when we look at Tehillim, if you look at source number 3, what is the order in Tehillim? First you have Bamidbar, if you source number 3, Bamidbar, the people who go through the desert. Then you have those who are in jail, incarcerated. Then you have those who are sick. And then you have those who go through the sea. When we look at Rashi, first Rashi brings the sea, then he brings the desert, then he brings the guys who are incarcerated, and then he brings those who are ill. Why does Rashi switch around the order? In Tehillim we said it's first the desert, and then the incarcerated, and then the one who's ill, and then the sea. And Rashi switches it around. Why? If Rashi brings the whole proof from there, he should have brought it very exactly how it is in the Tehillim. So we must say that there's something going on over here. Why? Why did Rashi change the order? Not only that, when you look at source number 3, Rashi, the first 3, when he talks about those who go through the sea, he says, Yoirdei Hayam, in a plural way, those who go into the sea. The second one, Hoilchei Midbariyos, those who go through the desert. Vechavushe Beis Asurim, those who are incarcerated. When it comes to the fourth one, to the sick one, what does it say? Vechoyle shenisrape, and someone who is ill, who became healthy. Why the last one is singular and the other the other three are plural? When we look in the Gemara, the question is going to be even bigger. Go to source number 4. What does the Gemara say in Birchas Daf Nun Dal Damed Beis? The Gemara says the halacha of Birchas Hagomel, and the Gemara says as follows. Source number 4, Arba tzrichim lehoides. There are 4 that have to thank the Eibishter. Who are these 4? Yerde Hayam, those who go into the sea. Hoilche Midbariyos, those who go through the desert. Misha hayochoyle venisrape, the one who was ill and became healthy. Misha hayochavush beveis asurim, and one who went to jail. The Gemara also is not going in the order of the Tehillim, because the Gemara goes into order of the sea, the desert, who was ill, and someone who was in jail. The Tehillim starts with the desert, not with the sea. Then it goes to incarcerated. Then it goes to those who are ill, and then it goes to the sea. Why does the Gemara switch the order? So that's a question that Tosfos on the Gemara asked. Tosfos is one of the greatest commentaries on the Gemara. Look at source number 5. Tosfos is going to ask this question. Tosfos on the word Arba, Upe Tehillim lechashiv kazeh seder. In Tehillim, it doesn't have it in this order. Elachashiv hoilche hamid barishain. The Tehillim first brings the ones who went through the desert. Why doesn't the Gemara do that? And so Tosfos is a very interesting answer. The pasuk. The pasuk goes in the order of those who are more dangerous. So of course, going to the desert is the much more dangerous than anything else. The Gemara took those that are more common, that happen more often. So therefore, the Gemara starts with those who go to the sea, because more people go through the sea than go to the desert. So at least the Gemara, Tosfos explains why the Gemara has it in a different order. But why does Rashi have it in a different order than Tehillim? When we're going to go to the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamor, the question becomes even stronger. If you remember before we discussed that the Frierdiker Rebbe said the Maamor Baruch HaGomel, go to source number 6. For Sefer Hamaamorim Kuntreisim, page 368, in the Maamor that the Rebbe said Yud Beis Tammuz. What does it say? The Frierdiker Rebbe says, Vehinei arba tzrichim lehoides. There are 4 that have to thank the Eibishter. Who is it? Choyle shenisrape, someone who was ill and became healthy. Chavush sheyatzu beis asurim, someone who was in jail and came out. Yerde hayam keshe'olu, those who go through the sea and come up. And those who take that trip and finally finish the trip. In other words, they were first in the desert and then they finally reached where they are. So now the Frierdiker Rebbe doesn't have it, not like the Gemara, not like Rashi, not like the Tehillim, a total new one again. So we have already 4 different versions of this order. So we have to understand what is going on over here. Why is everybody switching around the order? So really the one that we are concerned right now is try to figure out Rashi, and then later we will be able to go back to the Frierdiker Rebbe. We asked before, also, why does Rashi have Choyle shenisrape as in a Lashon Yachid, that he has it as a singular, while all the other ones are also in Lashon Rabim or plural. Please remember this point, because we're going to have to come back to it later. To make a long story short, Rashi has a very, very simple question. Does a person have to thank the Eibishter? Of course he has to thank the Eibishter. There is no question that a person must thank the Eibishter. And when we look back in Chumash, we see something very interesting. We see it a few times, how people thank the Eibishter. Let's go, for example, to number 7. Source number 7. In Parsha Vayera, in Perik Chaf Aleph Pasuk Lamed Gimel. What does it say over there? Vayita Eishel B'Ve'er Shava. That Avraham Avinu planted an orchard or a hotel, a hotel in Be'er Sheva. Vayikra Sham B'Shem Hashem Kel Olam. And he called out Hashem's name in the whole world. What does it mean he called out Hashem's name in the whole world? Says Rashi, go to source number 8. What does it mean that he put a Eishel? Al Yedei Oisa Eishel, through that hotel, through that orchard. Nikrosh Moshe LaKadosh Baruch Hu Eloka L'chol Olam. Through that Hashem's name became that He is the God of the whole world. How did that happen? Through this hotel, through this orchard of fruit, that the whole world started talking about God. Says Rashi, source number 8, after the people finished eating and drinking, Amar Lohem, Avraham Avinu told them, to all these guests, bench, bless to the one that you ate from him. Svuri matem, you think that you ate from my stuff? No. Mishal Misha Omar vehoya ha'olam ochaltem. You ate from the person who created the world. So this is how we see how Avraham Avinu got everyone to thank the Eibishter. Not only that, we see that we have to thank the Eibishter also for a future thing. If the Eibishter says He's going to give us something, even for that we have to thank. As we see in source number 9, Parsha Lech Lecha Perik Beis Pasuk Zayin. What does it say there? Vayera Hashem el Avram. The Eibishter appeared to Avraham Avinu. Vayomer, and he said, this was right after the Eibishter told Avraham Avinu to leave his land and go to Eretz Yisrael. What did the Eibishter say? Vayomer, and he said, Lezaracha eten es haaretz hazos. To your children I will give this land. Vayiven sham mizbeach. So Avraham Avinu built an altar to thank the Eibishter. Says Rashi, what did he thank for? Al psura sazera, because the Rebbe told him, to your children I'm going to give the land. Avraham Avinu had no children at the time. Avraham Avinu had no land. So in one sentence, the Rebbe gave him 2 brachas. Which ones? Psura sazera, the good news that he's going to have children. Val psura Eretz Yisrael, for the psura of Eretz Yisrael. So Avraham Avinu thanked the Eibishter for the future. What do we see here? That for everything you get from the Eibishter, you have to thank him. Not only that, even more. Go to source number 10. What did it say in Birchas Rebbe? Parsha Yudalet Piskates. Medrash says over there 5 words that we know very, very well, which are Nefesh, Ruach, Neshamah, Chaya, Yechida. These are the 5 levels of the Neshamah. Everybody thinks that the Arizal or the Zohar is the one that invented these names. No, they were in the Medrash. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshamah, Chaya, Yechida. And the Medrash over there explains what they are. When it comes to the concept of Neshamah, what is the idea of a Neshamah, of a soul? Says the Medrash, Rabbi Levi b'shem Rab Chanina Omar. Rabbi Levi says in the name of Rab Chanina, what does Neshamah mean? Neshamah comes from the word Neshima. Neshima means a breath. What does that mean? Al kol neshima uneshima she'adam noishem. For every single breath that a person inhales, he goes in and out. Tzarich lekalis laboire. He has to praise the Eibishter. My time. Why? Because it says in the pasuk, Kol haneshama tehalel ka. Every neshama has to praise the Eibishter. What does Kol haneshama mean? Kol haneshima, for every single breath. Because if chas v'shalom somebody would choke and he can't breathe, he could go away from this world. Therefore, we have to thank the Eibishter for every single breath. And that's why the Chachamim instituted the whole concept of davening. The davening in the morning is blessings and praising the Eibishter. Why? Because we have to thank the Eibishter. So comes Rashi and asks an unbelievable question. What is going on here? If a person has to bring a sacrifice for every time he wants to say thank you to the Eibishter, how many sacrifices does he have to bring? He has to bring sacrifices all day for every single breath, for every single good thing that happens to him. And you're going to have millions of people every single day in the Beis Hamikdash bringing karbanos. And we don't see that this is what happened. Therefore starts off Rashi. as we said right away in source number 2. What does it mean, thank you? It's not just for anything you want to say thank you. Al nes shenaseloi. This is only in case of a miracle. If someone had a miracle, that's when he brings a Korban Toda. But not for every time he wants to say thank you. But if that's the case, then Rashi then has a second question. There were many miracles that happened to the Yid. Let's see, for example, go to source number 11. What was one of the most famous miracles that the Yidden had after they crossed the Red Sea and they came into the desert? Says the Rabbi, Parsha B'Shalach, Peri Tezayin, Pasuk Daled, Hinni mamtir lochem lechem min hashamayim. The Rabbi is going to send down bread from Himmel, from heaven. Man, there's no bigger miracle. That's one of the biggest miracles in history. That bread comes down from heaven. People don't have to work. Here it is. And how long did that last for? It says later in Pasuk Lamed Hey, Ubenei Yisrael ochles amon arboim shana. For 40 years in the desert, they ate the man. They also had the famous well from Miriam, and they had the clouds. These were all miracles. But we don't find that Yidden brought karbanis. First, you're telling me that for a miracle you bring a korban. No. When we look back in the history when the Yidden were in the desert, did they bring a korban every day for the man? No. So comes Rashi and says, so what do you bring a korban for? For which miracle? Therefore, says Rashi, what we need to do is we have to go and search in Tanakh, in the scriptures, where do we find a concept of zivchei toida, of a Korban Toda next to a miracle. So wherever we will find zivchei toida next to a miracle, we know that's the miracle that you have to bring a Korban Toda. Where is that? Says Rashi in Tehillim Perikov Zayin. And when we look at Tehillim Perikov Zayin, as we mentioned before in source number 3, over there it says clearly, V'yizbechu zivchei toida. In the 4th line over there, it says that they brought the Korban Toda. And in that same Perik it talks about 4 specific miracles, as we mentioned before. So therefore says Rashi, now we know what this Korban Toda is for. This Korban Toda is not your regular thank offering, it's for a miracle. It's not for your regular miracle, it's those miracles that the Torah says are considered miracle. Which ones? Those 4 which are in Perek of Zayin in Tehillim. So now we have a very clear understanding of why are these the ones that have to say Birchas Hagomel. So now we'll understand why does Rashi have to bring down all 4. Rashi could have just said the ones that are written in Perek of Zayin. No, Rashi doesn't do that. Rashi brings down all 4. Why does it bring down all 4? Very simple. Look at source number 3. First one is the Midbar. What is their reaction of the people who go through Midbar? Vayitzaku, vayadich b'derech hashara, yoidul Hashem chazda. They thank Hashem. Then come the Asirei on Yubarzel, those who go to jail. What happens to them? Also, yoidul Hashem chazda. They thank the Eibishter. Then comes the 3rd one, the sick one. What is his reaction? Yoidul Hashem chazda. And all of a sudden, after the sick one, it says, vayizbechu zivchei toda. They brought the Korban Toda. So the question is, how come only after the 3rd one it says vayizbechu zivchei toda? Only the 3rd one brought a Toda. What happened to the other ones? Therefore comes Rashi and says, we're not here to discuss why that's what it says, but I just want to let you know that all 4 bring the Toda. If I would have just said, look in that Perek, you would say that the concept of Toda goes only on the sick one, because right next to him it says vayizbechu zivchei toda. Therefore Rashi wants to make sure that we understand it very clear, that zivchei toda goes on all 4 of them. And that's why Rashi enumerates them all. Now that we understand that these are the 4 that say Birchas Hagomel, now we will understand why Rashi has it in the order, not like the Tehillim. What order does Rashi have? Let's have this again very, very clear. Rashi first says the ones who went through the sea, then he says the ones who go through the desert, then he says jail, and then he says the choyle. Why? Very simple. When you want to teach a halacha to somebody, a halacha, a law of what has to be done, if you give him a instance of what happened to him in the past, in this kind of thing, he can relate much better to it. If he experienced this thing, then he can relate to the halacha much better. When we look at the Yidden, at the sequence of events of their miracles, amongst these four, what was the first thing that happened to the Yidden? They went through the Red Sea. They went through the Yam Suf. After they went to Yam Suf, what happened? They went into the desert. After they went into the desert, what happened? They stayed in the desert like in the jail for 40 years. So therefore Rashi says it in the order that it happened to the Yidden. First Rashi says Yerdei Hayam, those who went down into the desert, into the sea. Then he says those who go through the desert. And then he says Chavusha Beis Asurim, those who went to jail. That's what puts them in this order. But Cholesh and Isrape, someone who's ill, that didn't happen yet to the Jews. That's going to happen only later when they're going to get to Israel, because here in the desert they had the man, everything was fine. Everybody was with the bait of Miriam. Nobody ever got sick. So therefore this also explains why Rashi says the Cholesh and Isrape Loshen Yochid, he says it in singular form. Why? Because the other three things, the sea and the desert and the jail, the Yidden went, everybody together went through it. So that's what Rashi says in the plural, Yordei Hayam, the ones who went through the sea, the ones who went through the desert, the ones who were in jail, because it goes about all the Yidden. Chayla is only something which is going to happen later in Eretz Yisrael. So if there's going to be a person who is ill, so he will have to bring the Korban Toda. So basically what we have over here now, that now Rashi is very clear. We understand the order in the Gemara, as Taisus explained. How does the Gemara has it? The Gemara explains why Tehillim has it in that order, and now we understand also why Rashi has it in that order. Each one has their reason for it. If that's the case, now we will understand the Frierdiker Rebbe. Why the Frierdiker Rebbe had it in his order? What did we say before? That how do you make the order of the four according to your personal experiences? So let's see, what were the experiences of the Frierdiker Rebbe? The Frierdiker Rebbe first was ill, as it's known that the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he took over the Nesias, when he took over his father's place, the leadership of Lubavitch in Tafresh Pei in 1920, the Frierdiker Rebbe got very, very ill, and he was on the verge of going to the other world. And there's a lot of stories about that Ragachover got involved, and the Chassidim, etc. And then Baruch Hashem, the Frierdiker Rebbe got out of it with miracles. Then he went to jail. So that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe, how does he have it? First he has, as we said before, in source number, where is the Frierdiker Rebbe? In source number 6. The first one that he brings is Cholesh and Isrape. Somebody who's ill and he got healthy. And the second thing he brings, the one who went to jail. Why? Because first he was ill and then he went to jail. So now we understand why he had it in this order. What? I heard that once from a chassid, but since it's not in the Sikha, I didn't want to say it. Yeah, there is a very cute thing that the Frierdiker Rebbe says that first he brings the sick, and then he brings the one who goes through jail. Then he brings the ones who go through the sea, and then those who go on a trip and they finally come to the destination. The Frierdiker Rebbe said this in 1927 when he came out of jail. Later, 13 years later, the Frierdiker Rebbe went through the sea, a transatlantic, to go to America, and then he ended up in America to stay. And as a matter of fact, he also went 10 years earlier to America, 3 years later in 1930, 2 years after he was in jail. Also he went to transatlantic. So some want to say that this was a prophecy that the Frierdiker Rebbe put the next one, the sea, and the next one when you get to your destination, because until he finally came to America, he was constantly traveling. But again, the Rebbe doesn't bring that into the Sikha. In the Sikha, the Rebbe brings only the first two. That why does the Frierdiker Rebbe put first the one who's ill and then the one who is in jail? Different than Tehillim, the Gemara, and Rashi, because the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote it according to his Seder, according to things the way that happened to him. So now I think we are all set. We understand all four: Rashi, the Tehillim, the Gemara, and the Frierdiker Rebbe, why they all have a different order. Because everybody talks according to their sequence of events. Now, we want to figure out something very interesting. By the way, Here the Rebbe has another whole arichas in the Sikha, which we are not touching. A whole pshat in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, but unfortunately we don't have the time to do that, and in Mirz Hashem we will do that in the next shir. Beautiful piece of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, how it is connected here to the Birchas Hagomel, but we're going to do that at a different time. Anyways, let's go to the punchline here. It seems like we're talking about 4 different people. One who goes through the sea, one who goes to jail, one who's ill, one who goes through the desert. Are these random things? Or there's some connection between these 4? If you start going through in Torah Sachsidus, these 4 that have to say Birchas Hagomel, we are going to come out with an unbelievable essay. It's mind-boggling. What we're going to do now is just one short little part of a Maamor from the Rebbe, and in Mirz Hashem, in a next year, we will discuss what the Rebbe spoke the first time when he came in America to his first Fabrengen about Darbot Tzrichim Lahoidus, which later also the Rebbe wrote it down in his own notes. It's a total novelty on the whole concept of Abrot Tzrichim Lahoidus. Beautiful, but unfortunately today we're not going to be able to do it. Let's just go through a quick few lines in a Maamor of the Frierdiker of the Rebbe of Tafshin Lamed Zayin, where the Rebbe explains beautifully this concept of what are these 4? Is there any connection between them? Explains the Rebbe, and this is going to be the beauty of it. Go to source number 12. In Sefer Hamaamorim Tafshin Lamed Zayin, a Maamor of Yud Beis Tammuz, which is based on the Maamor of the Frierdiker Rebbe in Yud Beis Tammuz, when he came out of jail. Says the Rebbe as follows. Source number 12, second line, yeah? In general, these 4 things. Choyle, the one who's ill. Chavush bebeis asurim, the one who was in jail. Yerdei hayam, those who go into the desert, through the sea. Veholchem midbarius, and those who go through the desert. Kemoi sheheim lemato bepashtus. How is it down here in the physical world? Where did that happen from? Nimshachim miklalus inyan yeridas haneshama beguf. This is only derived from the process of how the neshama comes down into this world. Why, says the Rebbe, Velochein, Hine Yeridas HaNeshama Beguv, the process of the Neshama coming down into this world is Bedugmas Klolos Daled Inyanim Eilu, is compared to these 4. We're not talking about 4 different people, we're talking about 4 stages in the process of the Neshama coming down into this world. The Hine, says the Rebbe, the concept of a neshama ascending, coming down into the world, descending into this world, it is a very low coming down. Why? When the neshama was up there in heaven, what does it say about the neshama? The neshama, that place, she's 100% pure. However, once she comes down into this world, when she comes down, she loses some of that purity. Why? Because through this descent, she becomes ill, because her intense love for the Eibishter is diminished. Like it says in the Kisvei Harizal, the Harizal, what he writes, the choyle begimatri memtes. Choyle, a person who's ill. How do you spell choyle in Hebrew? Ches, vav, lamed, hey. The numeric value of ches, which is 8, vav, 6, lamed, 30, hey, 5, is 49. The ultimate number is 50. 50, like the Yidden, when they went out of Mitzrayim, they had to go through a refining process of 49 days, and on the 50th, when they reached the highest level, that's when they got the Torah. Now, but a neshama, when it comes down, up there, she has 50, but when she comes down, she's choyle, she comes down to 49, and she becomes ill. That's the first stage. The moment she comes down, that's what happens. Source number 13, now we're going to go to stage number 2. So first she is a choyle. And afterwards, the Neshamah comes down even lower. Now, not only it comes down, it gets enclosed in a body and nefesh habamis, an animal soul. This means when someone is in jail in the spiritual sense. So he now at this point, after it falls into this jail, what happens? That she goes even lower. She falls into the big waters, into the sea, this world which is like a sea. And because this world is full of distractions and all kinds of things, Efshar, what could happen? Shekol mitziusa yutba, that his whole being should sort of sink in, it should drown. Zol fartrunke werden chas v'sholem behayam de'olam. When the Neshamah comes down, then he goes into a body, then he goes into the world. It gets lost, and it loses the whole spirituality that it had before. And then comes to the fourth level, and after all of this, go to source number 14, Umi Madrega Zu, and from this level, the Neshamah comes down even a lower level, until the level of desert. What is the concept of desert? It says in the pasuk, what is a midbar? It's a place asher lo yoshav adam sham chas v'shalom, that Adam doesn't live. In a desert, people don't live. It's not inhabited. Right? So the pasuk says, "Asher lo yoshav adam sham," that a adam doesn't sit there, doesn't live there. What does it mean? A adam, a person could be called either adam or ish, gever, enosh. Here we use the expression adam. Why? Because adam comes from the word adam elyon, compared to the Eibishter. A person is compared to the Eibishter. A desert is a place that adam that is not there. We don't see the Eibishter there. Dehainu, second line in source 14. What's in the midbar? That you don't recognize anything that has to do with Adam, al shem Adam elyon, which is compared to the Eibishter. Ki'im ach verak hachumrius. We only see the physicality of the things. Al kopanim gashmius the oilam lashon helem behester. The gashmius of the world, oilam, which is from the word helem behester, which is a concealment. And this seems to be a very, very problematic procedure. Look what happens to the Neshamah. It goes first through through these four stages, and then it's like in a jail. It's like in a midbar. So what happens here? Says the Rebbe, go to source number 15. The Chachamim tell us words that anybody who started Lin Chassidus knows these words. Mashbim oisei tehi tzadik ve'al tehi rasha. The Alter Rebbe starts off in Tanya that what? That when a person is born, before he's born, what do? They make him take an oath that he's going to be a tzadik and not a rasha. What does that mean? The leaf niyeridas haneshama beguf, before the soul comes down into a body, mashbin es haneshama, that we give an oath to the neshama. Comes the Rebbe and says mashbin doesn't only mean to give an oath. Upirush mashbin hainu gam masbin miloshen soiva. Mashbin also comes the word soiva, which means somebody is very satisfied, satiated. We give him mezetik temon. They provide him bekoiches shaloi be'erech me'akoiches shehoilu lifneze. That when a person has to come down into this world, that Eibishter gives him an abundant amount of extra energy, extra power, that he should be able to fight this war of God, of the world, of Olam. Just like when a soldier goes to war, you don't just send him like this. You give him the gears, you give him everything that he needs in order to be able to fight and come back victorious. The same thing, Mashbim, they fill him up with so many keiches that he should be able to do the job. Because in order for a person to be able to fulfill that concept of being a tzaddik, to fulfill mitzvahs, and also not to do any negative, that he shouldn't go astray. He needs a special assistance and encouragement for the Eibishter. Only after he has this encouragement, even though all the roads are prone to danger, the Neshamah comes down and all of a sudden he gets into this jail. But because he got all this extra energy from the Eibishter, he manages to get out. So therefore what happens? On this we say, they thank the Eibishter for his miracles. What are they thanking for? We thank the Eibishter for that special aid and encouragement that he gives. Through that we go out in peace, victorious from these four things. This thing that we go out in peace, this is something which is a wonder. That's what the end of the pasuk is, that the miracles that the Rebbe does, the wonders, because this is a wonder, how a Jew manages to withstand all the tests, and how a person withstands all these these hardships in order to take care of all the concealments that are in this world. So now we understand what are these abot tzrichim l'haidos. These four are not just four random people. This is the four stages of the Neshamah, how it comes down, and it seems like that there's a problem and they won't be able to make it, and all of a sudden they feel that encouragement that the Eibishter gives them, and then Yoidul Hashem Chazdei. They thank the Eibishter. Why do they thank the Eibishter? For the help that the Eibishter gives for them to be able to fulfill their mission. So the question is, okay, so where does that end? How does that happen? When are we finally going to say the final thank you for the Golus? Where's the final Korban Toda? Where's the end of this whole trip? There's a beautiful letter from the Rebbe written to Eretz Yisrael. In 1948, when they made the state, so they also, together with the state, they made a president. How do you say president in Hebrew? Nasi. The Rebbe, whenever he wrote a letter to the president of Eretz Yisrael, he never wrote the word Nasi. He always wrote president. So someone had complaints, why doesn't the Rebbe use the word Nasi? So the Rebbe answered back, you have to understand, it's a letter from the Rebbe, it's printed, we discussed it in one of the earlier shiurim. The Rebbe says, listen, from when I went to Cheder, when I was a little boy, it started forming in my mind what it's going to look like the time when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach is going to come, many things are going to happen. The hardest task for Mashiach is going to be, do you know what the hardest task is going to be? Yeshaya Hanavi, he's the one that discusses what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. This is all in the Haftarah of Achar Shel Pesach, where it says who Mashiach is, that he comes from the house of David, etc. Look what the Yeshaya Hanavi says. Look at your source number 16. Yeshaya in Perikid Beis Pasuk Aleph says that when Mashiach is going to take the Yidden out of Golus, and he's going to explain to Yidden what was this whole purpose of Golus, the tortures, the hardships that Yidden went through Golus. This is not normal. He is going to explain it in such a way that it's going to be so clear to us. How clear? Look what Yeshaya says in Perikid Beis Pasuk Aleph, source number 16, that we are going to say, Oidcha Hashem ki anafta bi. Thank you, Hashem, that you gave me Golus. The Rebbe says this is something that during the time of Golus is impossible. Mashiach will be able to explain to Yidden Golus in such a way that Yidden are going, in retrospect, say, Oitcha Hashem, thank you Hashem for Golus. This is something which is beyond human comprehension. Therefore, says the Rebbe, how can I, during the time of Golus, use the expression Nasi, when the pasuk over here in this chapter says Ve'avdi David Nasi lahem, that Mashiach is called a Nasi, because a Nasi is someone that can take and explain the hardest things in history, the hardest things in Torah, and bring them down in a very simple way, and that not only that we understand it, but also that we say, Oyitcha Hashem, we thank Hashem. And now we understand what is the final thank you that we are going to say. So therefore, now that we understand that who are the four that make the blessing of Birchas Hagomel, the ones that are enumerated in Tehillim. Now that we understand why Rashi has them in a different order, because Rashi has it in the order that the Yidden went through, and therefore the Frierdiker Rebbe has it in the order that he went through. And then Torah Sachsidus explains that these four are not just four things. It's a process. The process of the Neshamah. The Neshamah has to go through 4 stages in order to fulfill its work here in Olam Hazeh. And it's not an easy task. But ultimately, Yoidul Hashem Chazdoi, we're going to thank the Eibishter for all these trials and tribulations, because Mirz Hashem will be zeicha to the coming of Mashiach. And let us do everything that we can till we could bring Mashiach, and that we should be zeicha to the revelation of Mashiach immediately, so we should all finally be able to bring the real Korban Toda, as Ishaya says, Oyitcha Hashem ki onaftabi. Thank you, Eibishter, for giving us Mashiach, so now we can understand this whole concept of Golus and this whole purpose of creation, and let it be Teikef Umiyad Mamish.